Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host,
me, Terry D, and welcome to Around the World Today, our awesome podcast brought to you by Podcast by Real Terrio. So, it's a great day. Today's the 7th of November 2020. I had lost a year then. I really wish that we had, because we were in a better time. Anyway, we are in an even better time. If you're living in the United States of America, your election has now been called. And we are going to give you Terry's opinions. So 279 electoral college votes to Joe Biden. 214 electoral college votes for Donald Trump, who still thinks he's won. Sorry, Donald, no win. Do you remember your slogan, Mr. Trump? 4 more years? Well, how about this one? No more years. How about another one? 75 days. I must say, I have stood in elections myself, and there's been times when I haven't won and I felt, gutted that I've lost. You shake the other person's hand, but in COVID you don't. You wave or you give a virtual elbow knock, and you say, you won. I lost. But Donald Trump has taken this to a whole new level. Not only is he trying to deflect that he's lost. Yes, Donald, you've lost. But he's now trying to spark up electoral fraud. And his own party aren't even supporting him. He's asking people, his own supporters, to give him money. But today Donald Trump is on a golf course. What does this say to you? Any person who thinks there is actual an election fraud going on, and you're president of the United States, surely if you thought this to be true, you would be at your desk, working, trying to find out what's going on, rather than playing a round of golf on your own golf course that you're charging the US taxpayer for every time you go there, for your security to have their meals, for your staff to have their meals, for them to have their rooms. It's quite astonishing how you were going to Washington, D.C., Donald, to drain the swamp, as you put it, but you just increased the swamp, right? That was your plan. It wasn't to drain any kind of swamp that was in Washington, D.C. It was how Donald Trump could make this money for Donald Trump. We must remember, Donald Trump hasn't paid any taxes for a very long time. Well, he's paid the basic rate, okay, but he's hiding a lot of money. This is the same Donald Trump who a couple of months ago it came out about had bank accounts in China, where all banks have to give all records to the government, no questions asked, and are controlled by the government because it is a they control their economy, the Communist Party do, of China. Unlike, you can't really buy into the Chinese currency like you can with the pound and the dollar. Anyways, President-elect Joe Biden said he's honoured that he has been chosen. He's thanked the Americans as Trump still refuses to concede. Well, poor Trump. I tweeted him today. Twice. Yeah. And I tell you what I've noticed here in the UK from this. There's people like Nigel Farage, Leave.eu, you know, these kind of people, and who just don't trust the result of the election because Donald Trump tells them. I saw a Twitter tweet of an organisation quoting Nigel Farage. You know, Nigel Farage is somehow some kind of font on US elections, let alone understanding 51 individual states' laws. Nigel Farage, you know, the man who sat in the European Parliament for 20-odd years, but fought every day to end his gravy train, but was taking the money to do it. And putting the expenses through. If you're going to say there's trouble, or like there's too much money going to it, don't take the expenses. Because, you know, that kind of proves the point. It's a gravy train and you're on it. Not to expose some kind of gravy train, but to participate in it. Do you know? So basically, Nigel and Donald, this is what you've done. Because you've taken your expenses or you've given money to companies that you own, such as Trump Towers, Trump Hotels, Trump's golf courses, and you've made yourself richer because you make a profit from this. Now, as Nigel Farage, a little bit different, because I'm not aware that he actually did or owns many companies. If he did, well, you know, explains how he's been bankrolled. But anyway, he took expenses to fly between his constituency and Belgium. He took expenses to go on trips around the European Union on fact-finding tours. He then took expenses, you know, he took a wage. Why not take the wage and donate it? You know, or take half of the wage and donate half. It's a gravy train, remember, Nigel? Why are you taking private planes to Belgium and not, like, driving what works out cheaper on the Eurostar? You know, considering you were a English MEP from a constituency in England near the sea with docks nearby with ferries to Brussels and the Netherlands, and you could have driven back into Belgium. Into Brussels, Belgium and the Netherlands, and you could have driven into Brussels. But, Nigel, you chose to take the money and make your own pockets richer on the backs of the taxpayer. And today, in US history or in the US election, that is now ending for your friend Donald Trump. And I've got to laugh because watching through all of this, you've got Boris Johnson. Boris's reply, he must be having kittens today because there's this whole thing about Joe Biden being Irish. Well, it depends which part of Irish, but Joe Biden is a Catholic. So, you know, this is going to be fun. I also want to tell you my opinions in the next little bit about, all of this rivalry about religion being used as it. I don't think it's right, and this will be in the article too. That's going to be with this episode. I just don't know. Where does this leave us? Do you know what I mean? Oh, yeah, it's a happy day, and Joe Biden has won. But is Trump really going to go? Joe? Is he?
Listen, enjoy.
So do you think that Trump will actually go and, do what past presidents do? Or do you think he's going to try and run in 2024? Do we need another Trump? Or do you think one of his offspring, you've got Donald Trump Jr., the idiot. You've got the daddy's girl, Ivanka. And the idiot, the stupid one, Eric. I noticed that he sent the stupid one to do his bidding somewhere first with Rudy Giuliani. Now, Rudy, I love him. He's a comical chap. He's quite so funny if he just wasn't so serious. But the best bit is Rudy Giuliani resembles someone to me as a drunk. He has a problem, and you can tell because he looks a lot drunk. I've seen him do TV interviews when it's been late at night in America, early in the UK. He is pissed as a fart. He's as drunk as a lord on their birthday. What's just begs the question. It really does. What are these men getting from it? And then you look at what they're wearing and where they live and the kind of lifestyle they have. Rudy Giuliani does a podcast and he does personal advertisements for cigars. I do a podcast from a council house in the UK and we do very little personal advertisements. However, if you do want to feel good and donate some money, send me a message and I can give you some great causes in Swansea to donate some money to. But I digress. Now, I don't know if you've got, because we are about 12 minutes into this podcast and it's so far turned into a whole, my rant at Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders. No, I'm not Bernie Sanders. I like Bernie Sanders. That idiot lawyer who used to be the mayor, whose name I've forgotten. Rudy Giuliani. Him. No, there's quite a few things. So we'll move on, shall we? So this week in England on Thursday, we saw that England went into a lockdown announced by Prime Minister Boris Johnson. That was quite interesting, wasn't it? Considering 2 weeks ago Boris Johnson was advocating no more lockdowns for a nationwide approach. Local lockdowns may, in a tier approach that didn't work, will come in. He criticised the Welsh government for doing it, criticised the Scottish government for their 5-tier approach, criticised the Northern Ireland government for lockdown, said he won't do it, but guess what? There's a lockdown. And, I just can't get the fact that his supporters, like Trumpists, still support him no matter what. No matter what he has done. And this really does lead me on to the next section. Now, through this election, many of you, I should give you a thing because we are going to talk about faith. And preferably my views, so no scriptural or church elements are involved. This is my opinion as a Christian and as someone who's studying the Bible and scripture. But here we go. So during the election, I have seen signs for Catholics for Trump, Catholics for Biden, Christians for Trump, Christians for Biden, the evangelical lot for Trump, none for Biden. But do you know what I mean? And I've seen religion being banded around. Trump hires a spiritual advisor. An evangelical spiritual advisor who is trying to invoke the Holy Spirit to come down and win on this election. And I got really angry about this. I don't know. I just felt that, this is a line that you've crossed. Politically, morally, you've crossed that line. You've already crossed the line, do you know what I mean? But in this election, you've crossed the line. Basically, to try and invoke God into an election. Yes, God is everywhere. And we'll get onto that as well, because they're trying to say that God is only on one side. So to these people, to these Trump supporters, God is on their side. To the Biden supporters, God is on their side. Now, this is going back to something that I've been looking at as part of my theology course last week, but we did it in the terms of evil and good. And one of the readings directed us to read an account from Auschwitz, where a dead body was hanging, and someone said, "Where is God?" And the person pointed to the person who was dead, and the dead body, and said, "There." What's quite, for me in that, what was quite astonishing to see that 3 days later, yes, I knew that, do you know what I mean? But 3 days later, I saw a meme picture of Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and two military guys escorting Donald Trump out of the White House come January 20th. And basically, I've been watching the news quite a bit the last couple of days, and I put on the news again, and I saw these placards, Catholics for Trump, and and all of this, and I was thinking to myself, and that's where I got the last little bit from. I was just thinking to myself, to these people, where is God? Because to them, to Trump's spiritual advisor, when Trump loses, God wasn't on her side, because she's been advocating that God is on the side of Trump. And it goes back to why religion should keep out of politics and just advise, not, pick politicians and get involved in political debates unless it's to advise. So poverty, the church in the UK, the Anglican Church, can do a lot because, of their roles in the House of Lords. So they can advise and they could help make legislation. Where in America, it's not like that. There is a big separation of church and state. But to these voters, I feel that they're going to become disgruntled in their religion and in their faith of God. Because I feel that with the Biden result, that these people may just feel that God has turned his back on them. But that's not the truth, because, what I noticed in that photo is, and we're going to go back to the Auschwitz story, and we're going to go back to everything that we are as Christians. What I noticed is that God is everywhere. God was with the people in that photo. So in that photo, what you can see on our website when I pop it up, what you'll see is President-elect Biden sitting behind the Roosevelt desk. God was there with Biden. You see President Trump being escorted out. God was there with Trump. Then you see two American soldiers. Remember, this is going to play into law enforcement and soldiers. So even if a civil war did happen, it's going to be free-sided approach, because the military and the judicial services, their job is to put down this stuff. The movements of government will happen straight away because it's set out in law and in the Constitution. Even if Trump and Biden don't win, it'll go to Nancy Pelosi because you're taking it to court. So the Democrats still win, Donald. But back to what I was saying, and I've now just turned a beautiful piece of what I was saying, so I want to get back. Sorry about that, but those soldiers, God was there with them. So God was with everyone in that room. He doesn't take sides. You should never ask him to take sides, because he's not going to take sides. If it's going to happen, it will happen by God's grace. So we just have to go with it. Obviously, it was planned that Joe Biden was to become president. It was the will of the people, who I would like to think, were directed by the Holy Spirit. Directed by God to vote this way. Whatever happens, happens. There's no way of changing it. It's how we take the news. That's the best bit. But I just feel, like I said, that many of these Catholic, Christian, evangelicals are going to find themselves a tad out of place with God, and a tad resentful of God. Now, Psalm 96 is one of my personal favourite psalms, and it's about honouring God. Now, if they're disgruntled with God, how can they honour God? How can they worship? Well, yes, I know that we can worship God, and we can come to God and to Christ at our worst and our best time. We can hate, we can love, we can be in communion. We can feel all of this because he gives us that freedom to choose, to love. And I always choose love over hate. It's a little bit better. Now, I have just ranted about Donald Trump, Nigel Farage, and a few other political people. But I don't hate them. That's the difference. So, yeah, I'm a tad worried that for these people, because I don't know if it's the way that they've been taught theology, or the way that it is in America. But to me, it's kind of wrong for religious fractions to come out in a way to hold a placard up saying Catholics for Trump, Catholics for Biden, when, no, you are Catholic. Or Anglicans for Trump, or, Episcopals for Trump, or no, Episcopals for Biden. No, you are Episcopal Anglicans. And I use the Anglican word because that's what they are. Or even the evangelicals. You are evangelical. You are followers of Christ. All of you. It doesn't matter, people, what political persuasion you're going to vote in this time. Politics on earth really doesn't and shouldn't divide us or actually matter, considering we're told that there's only one kingdom. So all of this nationhood that we keep hearing about, and I had to actually say to someone about this nationhood that we keep hearing about, and, why should America become more insular? It goes against everything that we're taught as Christians. It really does. So it begs the question, which side was God on? God was on all sides. But then I really have to wonder, when you have Donald Trump spouting some of his rhetoric about Christianity, has he actually picked up a Bible? When he was talking about, travel bans and putting children in cages. Because I do wonder that if he has, and this is now starting to turn into a 25-minute rant about Donald Trump, and with a bit of religion turned in, and I turned it into something I didn't want to, but it just begs the question. But finally, there was hope, wasn't there, today? Because Joseph Biden was elected. Joseph Biden from Scranton. Never been to an Ivy League college. Didn't have much growing up. With his first female vice president, Kamala Harris, first African American and Indian American vice president. Today, like I said when this started, was a great day for democracy. But it also has been a bad day for democracy. Because the President of the United States, the current 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, refuses to concede the election because, according to him, there was fraud. Now, I remember a tagline that Donald used during the impeachment trials called "No collusion." Well, Donald, how about no fraud? Sorry, no voter fraud. To me, when I keep hearing this, it's like these people think it's a high school election or a college election where you have a ballot. Or do you remember here in the UK when you were in school and we used to have to elect like a head prefect or a form monitor, and the teacher would rip up pieces of paper, hand them out, and then you'd have to go and put them in a box, and the teacher would count them. Janice 1, Mary 2. Do you know what I mean? Like this, and like. It's like they somehow feel that this is how an election is done, failing to take into account that the people who observe the elections, so the staff who are counting the ballots, are non-political. Also failing to take into account that there were international observers taking part in most election places in the USA. Also, it's been quite funny to watch Sky News during this, and NBC and a couple of other news stuff. I've been quite into it, the election, and seeing Trump supporters. The Nile isn't only a river in Egypt. Denial is quite hard. But in time, maybe you can become united as a country. And with President Biden, I believe that that's what's going to happen for America. People have said how bad Joe Biden's going to be for America. I don't believe this. Because look at it this way. How bad has Donald Trump been for America? Donald Trump has spent 365 days, actually 369 days, of his presidency playing golf. Barack Obama only spent about 1 month of his whole 8-year presidency. Donald Trump has spent almost a year at his own golf courses. Think about what that money could have done to universal health care. Think about, Donald Trump talks about socialism. There's a socialism and communism, tries to put it together, doesn't he? There's a big difference, right? And this is what I don't get about being socially minded and being a communist. There's also a big difference between being socially minded and being a socialist. Yes, you can look after the people in your community. It doesn't mean you're a communist, for heaven's sake. It doesn't mean you're a socialist. So, giving people of your country the best healthcare that they can get for free when they need it, universally, is being socially minded. It's not being a communist. Look, putting the needs of your own people before big business isn't being communist. It's called being a good leader. And I sometimes wonder if Trump ever knew this, because many of the businesses that he owned have failed. So, could he understand this? He was given the company by his father, Fred Trump. He was born in the United States, I believe, but he wasn't meant to be. And he was meant to be born in Germany, but they kicked his grandfather out of Germany, or Trump's grandfather out of Germany, for non-military service. I believe they're Quakers or something. And his mum, Trump's mum, is Scottish. So, sorry, I'm going to be quite rude here. You would think that between those two nations, he would have learned to lose by now, and lose with grace and dignity. But Trump hasn't. And that's where we are. A divided United States. But there's hope there. They've even tried dividing religion. They've tried dividing neighbours, families. And I'm getting fed up of hearing about the divisions, because if you look across the pond here in the UK, we've got Brexit, and it's the same kind of division. And we are going back to a point, to why we were talking about Nigel Farage and Leave.eu. So I've noticed that a vast majority of supporters of Leave.eu seem to be hibernating away from normal life, seem to be removing friends who don't have the same opinions of them anymore. People they've been friends with for decades, for years, family members, because that's what they feel Leave.eu as an organisation are telling them to do, to hibernate altogether as like a radical cell. And I do worry that these kind of organisations, and we must remember, Brexit is all but done. Brexit in name, we've left the European Union. We left January just gone. We're only conducting a trade deal in a transition period. So we're no longer EU subjects. We haven't been for quite a bit. So it begs the question on why Leave.eu are still around. And why they're still campaigning. Aaron Banks, again, maybe he should concentrate on his businesses, because I believe during this coronavirus pandemic he's lost a bit of money and a couple of his stores have to close. Shocking, and he doesn't like lockdowns. And Nigel Farage, he backs him, and I really just don't get why. It's just astonishing why. And this is the day before Remembrance Sunday. So these kind of people talk about nationhood and being nationalist. Well, tomorrow, this is where we're going to be, is Remembrance Sunday. What happens when you take nationalism to the extreme? You end up at war. You end up with people giving up the most ultimate sacrifice. And that's their life. Because politicians believe in nationalistic values. How about we have some peace, love, compassion? And for the USA, like for the UK, all these divisions needs to stop. All this rubbish about immigrants needs to stop. All the rubbish about putting big business before people's lives also needs to stop. Because at the end of the day, what's the point of any of it if we just don't get on and can't share what we have and be happy. So, this Remembrance Day and this election day, how about we just forget how about we just come together? Forget everything else. Forget if you're enemies. Forget if you were on the Trump side, the Biden side. Forget if your grandfather fought against your wife's grandfather in Germany. Forget there were sides. And just come together as a human race. As God's human race. It doesn't matter, because, like I've said to you, whatever side you were on in the election, and you could probably tell that I was supporting Biden quite a bit, and yes, I do have family, but I resisted from commenting up until yesterday. But I have now commented. But God was on my side, on your side, on everyone's side. He's not involved in politics. These politics of the world don't concern him. So please, stop trying to use God like you try and use nationalism, like you try and use the economy, putting people's lives and making them better. Stop villainizing, God for one side of the people to the other. Stop all these attacks. Because, they lead to where we're going to be celebrating tomorrow. The armistice of the First World War. The armistice as well. And we're also going to remember every person who have died for the United Kingdom and Commonwealth countries. So please, for the life of us, just get on a bit better. And I want to thank you for tuning in to this episode of Around the World today. And I hope you can join us next week for another episode. And I'll see you soon. Remember, check out our Facebook, www.facebook.com/RealTario. Or you can send us a tweet at RealTario. We're also on YouTube. We're all over the place. Visit our website, realtario.com, and check us out. And have a great day. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed today's show, please head over to iTunes, give us a rating, and leave a review.